Do you see anything now?
What do you mean? About you?
I guess so.
Nope, nothing.
Hey folks, it's a blind guy coming back at you with another Should You Watch episode. And on this episode, we're taking a look at 2015's Solace, starring Anthony Hopkins and Colin Farrell. And this one, I had never actually heard of this before. I saw that it was streaming for free on Prime, or as my mom would say, Prime Time. And so I thought I would take a look at it. And it's interesting. I'm a little bit torn on this one because I'll give you the rundown of the movie. It's about a psychic, and you all know how I feel about psychic movies, psychics in movies, and I still feel that way. But this one's a little bit different. It stars Anthony Hopkins, who is, I think he's a former professor. I think it has never really tells you what his old job used to be, but he has since gone into being a bit of a recluse, had estranged from his wife because his daughter had passed away from leukemia. This isn't all like spoiler stuff. This is pretty straight up. But then the FBI has a serial killer that they're trying to catch, and so they contact him to help them so far. That's kind of interesting. But he's a psychic, so now it's not quite, for me, as interesting, but he signs on to the case, and if you want to watch the movie, go watch it right now because I'm going to get a couple little spoiler things in here, but just to help you understand what the movie's about. It turns out later on that the killer, who is played by Colin Farrell, is also a psychic. And so now we have two psychics in this movie. And that actually makes it somewhat interesting because he can see what they're doing or that they're going to do, and they can kind of see what he's going to do. And I don't know how that actually works out in time. That's one of the problems with these time travel psychic type movies is they aren't very consistent when you think about them. But it does start giving you a bit of an interesting moral discussion, because what he's doing is he can see people who have terminal illnesses such as tumor in the brain, and then he goes and he mercy kills them with an injection. And he's a serial killer that mercy kills people. And so that's kind of interesting. I'm not really sure if it's really quite as deep as the movie makes it think, but the movie's fairly well done. Some of the action stuff's a little over the top at times. There's a female detective in the movie who is also a psychologist or psychiatrist, and she's a little over the top, a little overpowered. She's leading not only is she a psychiatrist, but she's a FBI agent who leads all of the charges into buildings, not like a SWAT team or something like that. So I found her character to be a little over the top. She does have a bit of a checkered past though, so she's maybe not a total Mary Sue, because she does have some limitations and weaknesses. But there's one scene in this movie where she gets behind another killer and shoots him, and there is no way, if you actually look at the way that the scene was set up, that she could have gotten behind him without him seeing her walk right in front of him. So I have no idea how they thought that was supposed to work. But it's a minor little scene in the movie, and so I didn't think it detracted too much. The movie scores a 6.4 out of 10 on IMDb. I actually think that's probably a little low. I might give it a 6.8, 6.9. Not something I would ever own, but if somebody wanted to watch an interesting serial killer movie, kind of in the vein of Seven, I think this one's worth watching. It does do some jump scare stuff with psychic movies like to do this a lot, when like somebody touches Anthony Hopkins, he gets a really vivid vision of, it's kind of esoteric, weird, abstract type stuff like blood flowing from somebody's forehead or something. And I think they use that a little too much as a gotcha jump scare type thing in the movie. Another issue I have with some of these time travel movies and psychic movies is when you see future events and then you act accordingly, you then obviously alter the future. So then what did you see then in the past if that future never actually happened? So it almost causes like are these psychics seeing a potential future or a modal future? And so it's something that why I just don't think time travel and things like that really works in movies. Movies like Frequency and Back to the Future do it fairly well, even though it still causes some issues in those movies. So just something to think about while you're watching this is Colin Farrell's character has seen a potential future and acting upon it, and Anthony Hopkins' character has seen a potential future and acting upon that, but then none of it actually really happens, but then some of it does happen. And they also have issues with having to limit the psychics. And that happens in any story where you have somebody that has supernatural powers like a wizard or something. You have to find a way to limit them so they can't just do anything they want. And I feel like the limitations are okay in this movie. Anthony Hopkins just sees visions of things and he doesn't really understand what they mean all the time. But there's times when he does seem to really understand it, so it's not real consistent. Colin Farrell's character seems to be more powerful. He seems to be able to see exactly what's going on with somebody, and so they didn't necessarily limit him. Something else that I think is pretty cool about the movie Solace is that it does recite some of the poem The Leeton Echo by G.M. Hopkins, if I remember correctly, which is a really cool poem. It doesn't actually fit very well for how they use it in the movie because I think the context of the poem's different than the way they're using it. But if you want to hear one of the hardest poems to ever learn and to recite, check that one out. It is pretty cool. The Leeton Echo by G.M. Hopkins, who is a Jesuit priest. Very cool. But other than that, I think it's an interesting movie, worth watching, especially since it's streaming now on Amazon Prime Time. And so that's what I've got for you guys on this episode of Should You Watch. That's the movie Solace from 2015. If you want to support the channel, you can use the link in the description below just to order the movie, rent the movie. It's streaming for free now, so no, that doesn't make any sense. But you can also just use that link to get to Amazon and purchase anything you want, and that supports the channel without costing you anything extra. If you want to sponsor a video, just shoot me an email using the email in the description, and we'll set something up. I've got some more reviews coming up this week, and we have a 100 subscriber challenge coming up. So we're going to see if we can break that 100 subscriber mark, which is really hard to do apparently. But I thank you guys for everything you do, all the support. I do this for fun, but it is more fun when people are watching your videos. So I'll see you on the next episode of A Blind Guy's View. Laters on the Menjay.
Laters on the Menjay.